Lordaeron and the restoration of Lordaeron has been a topic for, well, nearly 2 decades, and finally with the recent information, something may actually be happening. With the Dark Rangers customization in 9.2.5, the undead are no longer a Horde only thing. There is the possibility of the restoration of Gilneas in the very near future, and the ultimate normalization between the faction relations. Seeing that the acceptance between the humans and the undead may soon reach an all-time high, is it possible that Lordaeron could become a neutral hub for a future expansion or a content patch? Could both the Horde and the Alliance reach a compromise and make this a neutral city? Did you know that if you use Python software like Windows, you are very vulnerable to viruses and other types of malicious activity? Well, the sponsor of this video, Royal City Keys, has the solution, as you can get cheap licenses, as in $2-3 cheap, and there are also a bunch of other games and software you can choose from. Best of all, if you use my code DORON, you will get an additional 10% off, so if you want to support the channel and get something for yourself, check out my link in the description or the QR code. I know the topic of the video is a tad bit ridiculous, at least on first glance, but you gotta realize that the factions have changed significantly since Classic, and the races and what is actually available in the game. So, the Forsaken were originally those that fell in the Scourge invasion back in Warcraft 3, mainly humans but also elves, and most of them were Lordaeron citizens. Now, here's the thing, since most of them were Lordaeron citizens, they settled in the ruins of the Lordaeron capital city, creating a new capital in the sewers known as Undercity. However, the Alliance at the time didn't really like this all that much. Lordaeron was one of the most important human kingdoms, if not the most important one. Seriously, back then Lordaeron was more important than Stormwind is today, so from this perspective, imagine just if the entirety of Stormwind fell to some mysterious dark undead power and now these undead control the ruins. It would definitely be a different scenario. So naturally the humans thought that these undead are just mindless zombies, that Lordaeron needs to be cleansed in a crusade, and that the glorious human kingdom should be rebuilt. Well, as you would imagine, the Forsaken didn't really see it that way. Some of them saw that they were abandoned by this alliance, that they betrayed them, they didn't help them in their time of need, and they rightfully claimed their own homeland in Undeath. So naturally this led to some strained relations and a constant threat of an alliance invasion in the north. Sylvanas at the time, and the time was during Classic, she knew that the humans would not give them peace, and if they were isolated from everyone, they would just be an easy target. So they decided to join the Horde. They actually joined the Horde under the pretense that they knew they were under this great curse and they sought a cure through shamanism and druidism, which led the Doran and the shamanistic troll to accept them, but really, that was just BS. The Forsaken, in all reality, just needed allies to defend them. Well, that was all the way back in Classic. The world of Warcraft changed drastically since that point. We learned a lot more, new characters were introduced, and now it is literally just a completely different geopolitical landscape. First off, the humans were constantly exposed to the undead. They realized they are not just abominations. There was the event known as the Gathering that ended up in a disaster, but it was a crucial event as it showed that there was a big initiative for the undead and their human families to reunite. Then we went into the Shadowlands, we saw what undead was, we learned that necromancy can be spread across different magics, and now, most importantly, Calia Menethil, the actual heir to the throne of Lordaeron, the daughter of Menethil, and the one very much tied to the Alliance, became a part of the new leadership known as the Desolate Council, and she swore that she will help out Gilneas by pulling out the undead troops. Now, one thing is very important to analyze, and that is the Forsaken loyalty to the Horde, their faction allegiance, and their current relationship between the Horde and the Alliance. Keep in mind, the Forsaken, since they are mainly just undead humans, are actually a lot closer to the Alliance than they are obviously to the Horde. Culturally and in every way, shape, and form, it is just that the Alliance originally rejected them when they wanted nothing to do with them. The undead really don't have all that much in common with the Orc Shamans, the Troll Witch Doctors, or the Troll and Druids. Furthermore, they have always been the least loyal of the Horde races, and those that pretty much just made it quite open that they were a part of the faction because it was in their strategic interest. And now, I'm not saying that the Forsaken are not to be trusted. They obviously proved their worth over and over again throughout the years, but it is just that they're not exactly all that strictly tied to the faction itself, and them joining the Horde was more the way the geopolitical situation was at the time. Furthermore, faction dynamics seriously change, and we really don't know what expects us in the near future. The battle for Azeroth is over, and right now it seems like there are no more malicious influences that are driving the conflict between us. Blizzard even confirmed that more than likely a big faction war will never again happen in the future, and they pretty much just sealed this deal by adding cross-faction grouping. All the malicious influences are gone at the moment, the old gods, the Legion, Sylvanas, Garrosh, Jailer. So this might mean for the first time that the Horde and the Alliance may just unite for good, like for real. This time. This leads us to the topic of the video, and that is Lordaeron and the slightly preposterous assumption that it might become a neutral hub in the near future. I know it sounds a tad bit ridiculous, but seriously, it could be a real possibility. As you may have seen in 9.2.5, the capital was cleansed from the plague. Sure, the Alliance attacked it quite recently, but more damage was actually done by Sylvanas through the aggressive plague she used, and the attack itself was a response to the burning of Teldrassil. However, Calia Menethil recently became one of the leaders, and she sent a message to Gen that she will work on convincing the Forsaken to give back Gilneas to the Alliance, which actually even caught Greymane by surprise. Now, I know giving back Gilneas doesn't exactly equate to giving everything they have, but I'm not saying giving back everything. I'm talking about Undercity, or the capital city, becoming a neutral hub, something akin to Dalaran, as now it will no doubt be rebuilt. Calia, as Lordaeron ability and the actual Alliance leader, has a claim on retaking this land as well as Gen, but really, just think about it. Why fight? Why not just reach a compromise and live together? And live together despite the curse and all that is going on. Literally, there is nothing that is leading them to conflict anymore. Sylvanas is out of the picture. There is no big deity that wants to create war between the factions to feed souls to himself in order to free himself. And there is a lot more goodwill now between the factions, especially if the Forsaken decide to give Gilneas back to the Alliance. A big step in this direction was done with the recent Dark Ranger customization, where the Void Elves, aka the Dark Rangers, rejoined the Alliance as well as the Night Elves. This means that those that have an actual claim as the undead that lived in Undercity and looked at it as their own home are now a part of the Alliance. Does this mean that they will never again be able to return to their old home? Sure, the Dark Rangers are elves and are really not Lordaeron citizens, but they are nonetheless the original Forsaken, and Sylvanas was a Dark Ranger herself, so could the former capital city become neutral? What are the actual possibilities? Now, some people had a bit of a hilarious solution of making the Undercity Horde, so the sewers and the underground stuff, while the Alliance could inhabit the upper part. However, I think this is just no doubt ridiculous, but something akin to Dalaran or Oribos could actually be possible. The Horde and the Alliance have a long history of spending time together in hubs, and I know the toxic sewers of Undercity are not exactly the ideal dream location for humans, but it could be a solution for all those Lordran refugees to finally return back home after all these decades and to just reunite with their family. Since Lordaeron was recently and quite recently destroyed and just cleansed, it is entirely possible in a future expansion that it could be the focus of the new expansion. With hints of Gilneas returning, the Northern Eastern Kingdom could become seriously important, so it could entirely be realistic that this capital could become completely remodeled, as really, at the moment, the upper portion just doesn't look like a real city. In-game, this upper portion should resemble Stormwind and not just like some random dungeon. As I said, at the moment, the relations are really uncertain and no one really knows what awaits us. Some hints at a serious normalization between the Horde and the Alliance, and some Forsaken already joined the Alliance and they didn't even defect. The undead literally just allowed them to go to the Alliance. So having Lordaeron restored might actually become a reality, but not restored in the terms of a light crusade to cleanse the lands of the undead, but restored as in the families reuniting together, and that could be a very real possibility. Thank you for watching. Check out the undead customization for humans become a thing, and check out Nords Academy for videos of real world history. See you next time.